We have this urban legend in my city called the Wrong Way Man. Supposedly, you might see him standing on the side of the road when you're driving. Some say it's always when you're on your way home. I've seen pictures of the Wrong Way Man. They circulate among us by text message. They circulate among students, workers, friends, and family here. Oddly, I've never seen any of those pictures posted online. I'm not sure if it's because of fear or because those who've taken the pictures want to perpetuate the mystique of our local urban legend, or because of something else. I was pretty sure those pictures had been a hoax, just someone dressed up as the Wrong Way Man. Maybe it was the same person every time. As far as what the Wrong Way Man looks like, he wears his tattered clothing backwards, usually a flannel shirt and jeans. His painted smiling face looks eerily realistic until he turns to the side and you can see it's a smooth surface. It seems that he shaves his hair off, paints a face over the back of his head, and puts a shoulder-length wig on that covers up his real face. Those who I've met who claim to have spotted the Wrong Way Man say they've waited a week before driving home, staying over at a friend's house or a hotel. I've also heard if you see the Wrong Way Man that you need to wait a whole month before going home. The common consensus seems to be if you see him while driving home, don't finish the drive home. Turn around, go somewhere else, and wait for at least a week. I thought it was a bunch of nonsense until my date and I saw the Wrong Way Man when we were driving back to my house from the movies. It was Katie who spotted him. "Slow down," she said. "I think I see that Wrong Way Man you told me about." Katie had only lived in my city for half a year, so in my quest to win her over and be as interesting as possible, I shared with her everything I knew about the Wrong Way Man. Was it just a coincidence that we'd been talking about him a few days before? I had never seen someone dressed as the Wrong Way Man in person. Pictures, sure, but never in person. My foot was shaking as I eased up on the gas. It was dark, nearing midnight, and there were no streetlights. My car's headlights lit him up. On the side of the road, he was facing us. Actually, he had his back to us. That painted face was facing us. The jeans and flannel shirt and wig were all turned our way as well. His arms and legs looked wrong. They were shoved down in his clothing the opposite way. I wanted to be amused, but I was alarmed. When we got to be about 10 feet away in my car, he turned his painted head towards us. Those painted eyes, realistic but forever held too wide, seemed to be staring right into mine. As we drove slowly by, I waved to him and laughed to try to ease some of the tension. He did not wave back. I looked at Katie. She was waving too, but she wasn't laughing. I glanced back in time to see the slick side of that person's shaved, painted head, and the optical illusion of a real face being there was shattered. Shattered, but somehow worse for it. Also, when I peered into the rearview mirror as we increased our distance, I thought I saw something glinting beneath the shoulder-length wig he wore. Then he was gone, lost to the darkness. I picked up speed. He hadn't been walking, but somehow I was worried he would quickly come after us. "So what do we do now?" Katie said. "We can't go to your home or mine." I glanced at her, and soon we both started laughing. "Well," I said, "after tonight we'll be able to tell everyone around that we saw the Wrong Way Man and went immediately home." "I wondered who was pretending to be the Wrong Way Man," Katie said. "I wonder why they were doing it. Do you think we should turn back around and try to talk to them?" "I'd rather we didn't," I said. "They could be dangerous, but I'm sure it's just someone looking to keep the urban legend alive." "It's your car," Katie said, "but if it was mine..." "All right," I said. "We'll turn back around." My grandpa used to say, if you're in doubt which turn to make, you can always take a U-turn until you figure things out. He used that as a metaphor for life. But as I did my U-turn, my heart was thrashing in my chest. We drove down the entirety of that dark street without seeing that person again. It was a couple of miles long in that direction, so there's no way they could have walked or run the distance so quickly. Katie and I decided that the person dressed as the Wrong Way Man must have left the shoulder of the road for the surrounding woods. The idea of them hiding in the woods as we drove by again made me feel like I had spiders crawling over my flesh. We did another U-turn, and during that whole time, I kept glancing around in case that person jumped at us from out of nowhere. But soon we were heading back in the direction of my house with no second look at the Wrong Way Man. Katie and I tried to laugh it out, and we tried talking about other things, but both of us were pretty scared. We couldn't stop glancing out the windows or into our side mirrors. We turned into my subdivision, then we turned onto my street, and everything changed. As soon as we turned onto my street, we started to go backwards instead of forwards. "Did you put it in reverse?" Katie said. Her hand was gripping my arm. It was as cold as ice. I stopped the car, Both of us were looking down. The car was in drive. I took my foot off of the brake and put it onto the gas pedal again. The houses, the familiar houses I saw every day when coming home, were moving away from us. Maybe something's wrong with my car, I said. But when I tried driving forward again, I looked at the side and then in the rearview mirror. We were not moving. In front of us, the houses receded every time I put my foot on the gas. But from the side and rear, it appeared that we were standing still. On my street, everything was well lit. There were tons of street lights, so we couldn't chalk it up to limited visibility. "Let's get out of here," Katie said. Her voice was almost a whisper. "Yeah," I said, in a similar way. "But how are we going to leave?" "Put it in reverse." When I put my car in reverse, we actually moved forward. But to the side and rear, once again we seemed to have not moved, like we were caught just past the entrance to my neighborhood. Right when Katie and I thought about getting out of the car, we spotted someone coming towards us. They were approaching us from the front of the vehicle. They were about 20 feet away and closing in. I recognized him. He was my neighbor, Mr. Nelson. I would often see him working on his garden while driving by to my house. He was walking backwards towards us. All of a sudden, he stopped. He began shouting, "Emple, Emple," over and over again, standing stock still, his back to us. Only later would I realize he had been saying, "Help me," in reverse. I rolled down the window. "Mr. Nelson," I said, "what's the matter?" He stopped shouting. Now that my window was down, I could hear his body creak and snap. Blood poured out of his fissures as the joints of his arms and legs changed drastically. When Mr. Nelson's head twisted all the way around towards us, I was sure that I saw the light go out of his eyes. Whatever had taken over Mr. Nelson made a first step forward with the new architecture of his body. Katie and I both began to scream at that first step. I rolled up the window as Mr. Nelson walked around on strange, inhuman legs. His kneecaps and elbows had become stretched and exaggerated from being reversed. I put my foot on the gas, with the car still in reverse. Through the front windows, we seemed to be careening forward. A glance out the sides or in the rear view showed us to still be stationary. We slammed into Mr. Nelson. Blood splattered across the windshield. The car rose and fell as we went over his body. To the sides and rear, there was no indication of the car rising and falling. I did not see a lump appear behind us. I kept my foot on the gas, still going forward, in reverse. I saw a window of a neighbor's house shatter. A couple I barely recognized crawled out like baby spiders out of eggs, leaking blood as they scraped themselves against the shards in the window frame. When the wife paused in the window, she smiled. She intentionally rubbed her scalp against a particularly sharp-looking piece of glass. I could see the white of her skull. By then, her husband was already on the ground running towards us. I sped forward. Their house vanished in the sides and rear of the vehicle, which were, again, still stuck near the street's entrance. More people were coming out of their homes. They came out all twisted and broken, damaging themselves further as they exited. They ran towards us on backwards legs, turning their backwards arms. Everything about them was the wrong way. Before long, I found myself slamming on the brakes. "Keep going!" Katie yelled. "They're going to catch up with us!" Ahead, I saw my own driveway. Someone that looked like me was talking to another person with a painted face. The painted face nodded up and down. It nodded like a real face would do. Then I saw the wig shuffle and move seemingly on its own. I realized that the true face under that wig was talking, moving its lips, breathing. The wrong way man was talking to me or someone who looked like me. At the same time, Katie was reaching over me, trying desperately to put her foot on the gas. A couple of twisted pieces of bone and meat collided with the windshield. It was a mangled-looking couple. These were faces I should have recognized, but couldn't due to their present state. Their twisted arms continued to beat at the window, even though their eyes told me that no one was home. A spider's web of cracks spread across the windshield, its grooves filled with blood. I slammed my foot on the gas while helping to steady Katie back into her seat. We flung those two off, and right after that, we ran over an entire family in quick succession. I didn't have time to feel guilty. These were not my neighbors. These were not my neighbors. These were not... Katie and I both began to change. I heard some of my bones break. I felt it a moment later, like the reverse of lightning before thunder. Katie and I started screaming, almost in unison, and about in the same tune. It was like a choir of pain and fear. "Keep your head back!" I yelled as I strove to keep my head pinned against my seat. "Don't let it twist around. No matter what happens to the rest of our bodies, we can't let it kill us." "I know," Katie said. "Just get this car out of here. Make a U-turn or something." Make a U-turn, I thought. What was it my grandpa said about life, and how if you didn't know what to do, you could always make a U-turn? Still in reverse, yet still going forward, I wheeled the car screeching around. I didn't glance out the sides or rear. I gunned it, heading back towards where we had come from, the wrong wrong way man waited. He waited for me at the juncture of my driveway and the street. His painted mouth grinned forever. His painted eyes were too wide and incapable of blinking. We passed him and drove out of the neighborhood. Katie and I weren't out of the woods, though. I was able to get us to a nearby gas station before my legs and arms, which were part of the way reversed and leaking blood, completely gave out. We crawled out of the vehicle and onto the cold, hard concrete of the gas station. I blacked out almost at once, but Katie tells me she retained consciousness until the ambulance arrived. We spent months in the hospital with broken bones and torn ligaments and muscle. I think the only thing that had saved us permanent damage might have been the seats of our vehicle resisting our changes. We told the doctors we had been in a car accident. They shook their heads at us and kept asking questions. I did go back home, eventually. We both did. The reason I went home was because one of my neighbors that we had run over with my car came to the hospital to visit me. They seemed completely fine, as if nothing had happened and the wrong way man had never changed them. But damage was done to my vehicle and to Katie and I, both physically and psychologically. And while our bodies are on the mend, I don't think we'll ever be the same. I feel the wrong way inside. Cold. One word, one thought, frozen in my brain. An ice-choked breath misted past my lips, rattling my lungs. I leaned forward and squinted to see through the foggy windshield. Was it time to clean it again already? Stabs of pain shot through my finger bones as I tried to peel the ice off the windshield. I winced and decided that the glass didn't need to be wiped so soon. What was out there that I needed to see anyway? Nothing but impenetrable walls of snow falling on frozen asphalt. And what would be the point of cleaning the damned glass again? Nothing mattered in this place after all. Nothing at all. God, how long had it been since we'd been on this road? Hours? Days? Weeks? I couldn't even tell anymore. Time seemed to stretch and squeeze and wrap around back on itself in this place. Nothing seemed real, except for the cold. Biting, numbing, freezing cold. I heard a hacking cough behind me. It was Adam, hunched over on his knees, his eyes glued to his phone, which was somehow still working. His ice-caked eyebrows furrowed as he muttered something incomprehensible. Huh? I croaked. What did you say? This doesn't make sense, he whispered. We're going through the same stretch of road, over and over again. How? I sighed and turned back around, not bothering to give a reply. Adam wasn't the only one experiencing deja vu, for we had this same short conversation 5 times already. Or was it 6? I'm sure it was less than 7 at least. It's like we're stuck in a loop. Yes, we were. We'd been stuck in this goddamn loop ever since we had mindlessly driven into that rippling wall of fog resting on an empty stretch of I-75. We should have at least tried to investigate what that strange thing was before passing through it, or turned around when we started feeling chilly in Florida, deep in the month of July. Now it was too late. We had tried turning around to find that fog wall again, but found ourselves right back where we had started, repeatedly. My teeth chattered, more out of anger and frustration than the cold, I think. Probably not. Nothing was stronger than the cold here. It enveloped everything, seeping into your bones, froze your blood vessels, and stabbed your heart with its icicles, killing hope or whatever other emotion was foolish enough to still nestle there. There has to be a way out of this, I mumbled, but Adam heard me. And what way is that, huh? Why don't you tell me? He asked, slightly raising his voice, immediately regretting the decision and getting caught in a coughing fit. Good God, that sounded so bad. Hoarse, breathless, deep, like he was going to cough his lungs out of his mouth. What a sight that would be. At least he'd be out of this place. Maybe he'd even get to go to hell. A tiny shiver of delight ran through me at the thought of Adam being roasted alive in hell's fires. Fuck, but the warmth. We had tried to make some warmth ourselves. I turned on the car's heater and used my lighter to set some magazines on fire, but nothing worked. The heater blasted cold air at our faces, while the flames licking the edges of those mags had a heatless quality to them.
Nothing survived in this world other than the cold. Cold. One word, one thought, frozen in my brain. What? Was it happening again? No, it can't be. It was too soon. The sound of a hacking cough issued from the back seat. F this. This doesn't make sense. I didn't let him finish. I slammed the brakes, threw open the car door, and stumbled outside. I heard Adam screaming at me.
Hey, what the fuck are you doing?
His voice grew fainter with each word, sounding increasingly like it was coming from the bottom of the deepest well in the world. Snow whipped around me, sliced through my clothes, and lashed my skin open. Yet I continued to walk. One way or another, I was getting out of here. Either the cold was going to kill me, or I was somehow going to smash my way out of this loop. The former possibility grew more and more likely with each second. I felt my cheeks burn with the cold as it got hard to even blink. My toes had gone numb. I could tell that I was going to lose some of them to frostbite, but it didn't matter. I would gladly give an arm and a leg to get out of there, let alone some useless toes. I took another step. I could feel the cold sinking its teeth into my bones, trying to lock them in place. Yet I continued to walk. A strange thought had taken hold of me, that I would be fine if I could make it to the edge of the road, that this nightmare would end if I could just get off the blacktop. Just a little more to go. Almost there. Another step. My eyes grew heavy. My arms started to fall limply to my sides. Just another step. Just another. God, it was so cold. So cold. So cold. One word, one thought, frozen in my brain. I felt a tear freeze down my cheek. Why? Why was I back in the car again? Why? When will this journey end? This road. This goddamn road. My father was a deeply religious man. He used to believe that whenever good folks end up neck deep in trouble, God finds a way to send help to them. And it's never anything flashy either. No bright beams of light falling from the night sky. No winged angels descending from the heavens to lend a helping hand. No, it's just ordinary people living ordinary lives who go above and beyond what's expected of them to pull the desperate out of whatever hole they've ended up in. These people, he said, were the real angels. Although temporarily, they get to carry out God's will. Now, I wasn't nearly as religious as my father. In fact, he would be quite surprised and disappointed if he knew just how little I had actually kept to faith. But there have been times in my life where I've had to question my skepticism regarding religion and God. Most frighteningly on that rainy September night 4 years ago. It was the weekend. My buddy Aaron had come down to visit me in my little backwoods town, and the two of us had gotten smashed and made the terrible decision to go driving in the hills far to the south. Thought it would be fun to race through those winding roads while drunk off our asses. We were trying to get a taste of our spent youth by indulging in supremely reckless behavior. Luckily for us, we didn't end up hurling the car off a cliff. Not so luckily, Aaron ended up doing that to himself. We had stopped on the side of the road because he wanted to piss off the side of a mountain, which he did, of course, but he slipped and ended up falling after his own urine. I remember how the sight of him disappearing into the darkness after crunching and slipping on a twig made my heart almost jump out of my throat. I think I must have lost about half of my buzz with just that. The rest was gone when I spotted his battered and bloodied body on the ground below. Aaron was fortunate that he only fell and smashed his head open on the lower half of a switchback. If the angle had been off by even a little, he would have been too far gone to be saved. But he wasn't. He still had a chance to live. The second I spotted dark blood pooling near his head, I started running back down the road before remembering I had a car with me. I staggered back to it as quickly as I could, plopped myself into the driver's seat, and drove all the way back down to where his body had been. He wasn't moving when I got to him. For a second, I was afraid I was too late. I checked his pulse, still alive. I yanked open the door to the back seat, then pulled his limp and heavy body in. After ensuring that he was in no danger of rolling onto the floor, I jumped back into the driver's seat, turned the ignition key, and started driving back up the hill. I couldn't go back to my town. There were no medical facilities there. The nearest hospital was about an hour away in a slightly larger town further south. I bit my lip and wondered if Aaron would even survive the journey. Sweat exploded out of the pores in my forehead. The possibility of my friend dying in my car was horrifying. A couple of minutes in, the second stroke of bad luck hit us. The car's headlights died. I don't know if it was faulty wiring or whatever, but I was suddenly plunged into total darkness. It was a cloudy new moon night, and I couldn't see more than a foot or so beyond the hood of the car. Attempting to navigate those hills in such a situation was nothing short of suicidal. Yet I had to try. What other option did I have? Calling the emergency services would have taken too long. I might as well have just sat still and watched him die. That's when the third stroke of bad luck hit us like a bat to the back of the head. The skies started weeping. It didn't take more than a minute for the rain to intensify into what seemed to be a raging storm. I sat and fidgeted in my seat as the rain rode gusts of wind and started lashing the windshield, while Aaron continued to bleed out in the back seat. I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. I was about to call 911, knowing how pointless it would be when salvation came in the form of a single headlight shimmering behind the walls of water crashing down on the road. Could it be one of my dad's guardian angels? Feeling my heartbeat quicken, I began pressing down on the horn. The motorbike slowed down as it approached my car, came to a halt right next to my window. A middle-aged male voice issued from beneath the helmet.
"Why have you switched your headlights off? Almost didn't see you."
"There's something wrong with them," I answered quickly. "Listen, man, I need your help. My friend is hurt, and I need to get him to the hospital. The problem is I can't fucking see anything. Could you please help me out?" The helmet bobbed readily.
"Sure thing. Stick to my ass. I'll be your flashlight. I'll lead you past these hills, onto the highway into the town down south. Think you can do that?"
I nodded before he had even finished speaking, silently thanking God for sending him to me in my hour of need. And that's what the rest of that night's journey was like. The man slowly and cautiously led us out of the corkscrew-like roads that webbed those hills. For almost an hour and a half, I stuck to that bike, paying no attention to anything other than its taillight. Finally, the stormy journey was brought to an end as the man brought us close to the twinkling lights of a town, bade a grinning goodbye, and drove off. I thanked him profusely before I resumed the last stretch of the journey under the glare of wet streetlights. My heart sank as I recognized the streets I was driving through. My father's words came rushing back to me. Guardian angels. I thought that if he was right, and if that God was real, then it meant that so was the devil. The man on the bike had taken advantage of my lack of sight to bring us to another town half an hour away from the one with the hospital.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and smash that like button to get notified every time I upload a new video. You can also check out some more of my animated horror stories right here.